Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio. Today I'm going to be reviewing Amalfi Renaissance from designer Takeo Yamada and published in the United States by R&R Games. Amalfi Renaissance is a game with a theme that has been pretty well traveled. You are sailing in the Mediterranean. However, amongst the familiar theme and some of the familiar mechanisms are some clever twists and turns, some things you may not have seen before. So let me head over to the table and I'll show you the general overview on how the game plays. We'll come back here and I will let you know what I think. In Amalfi Renaissance, you're going to be gaining points throughout the game by utilizing your ships in one of a few different ways. First of all, you're going to be using them as workers in a worker placement style to go out onto the board or to private destinations that you're going to gain throughout the game in order to do some type of action. It oftentimes revolves around getting resources. And this is where the ships come in again, because not only are the ships workers for the worker placement spots, they also are going to be your resources. And so the efficient use and management of your ships is a crucial element of being successful in this game. So when the game starts, everyone's going to start with 4 ships in their bay that are active, ready to go. There's a port area here that I'll talk about in a moment, and then you have your shipyard of 6 ships here that are available to be built. You also start with 6 lighthouses in this workshop spot down here, and 3 bread, okay? That would be in a multiplayer game. The first player would start with 3 bread and other players would get more bread as they go along in turn order. All right, so on your turn, you're going to be doing actions, and the player boards here actually have a pretty good little lineup of the things that you can do. So the first thing you're going to be doing is taking actions, which is the meat of the game, all right? So let's say, for example, that the teal player here was first, and they wanted to get some resources. Well, what are they going to be using these resources for? Primarily, they're going to be for buying these cards, getting them into your hand. They might be for purchasing one of those private destinations I was talking about. It might be to get one of those cards up at the top that are all going to be fulfilling points in some manner or another. So, for example, let's see, I see here that maybe I'm going to be looking for one of these. I see this spot, maybe I want this for myself, and I see that it costs 3 of either the spices or the wine. You see that in the upper left, and it can be any combination of either. All right, so let's say that I'm making that my first goal, so I want to send a ship somewhere that's going to get me those items, or at least one of them. So perhaps I'm going to go to the wine spot. I go right here, and what this is saying is the cost is on the left of the kind of greater than symbol, and then what you get is on the right. So that one is saying that if you spend 2 food, you can send up to 2 ships to your wine area here. So let's say I decide to send both, 2 ships. I could have just done 1 if I wanted to. The next player would take their turn. Let's say that they, for example, maybe they wanted to get some food, and they'd go here, they would get 4 food, and they would discard the rightmost card from here. So just to kind of show you. All right, now at this point, I've got 6 wine that I can spend because each ship here is equal to 3 of this resource. It's like that for the wood, the wine, the gems, and the fabric, but for the spices, each ship only gives you 2. All right, so now that I've got 6 wine here, I see that that card I was kind of looking at before, or the private destination I was looking at before, says that I need 3, but it's in one of the leftmost spots, so I have to add 1. So let's say that I spend 4 of my wine to get that. I put that down, I spent 4 of them, and then the remainder can give me in bread. So I have 5 bread now, all right? Now this is now a destination that only I can go to. And on future turns, I can spend 1 bread to send up to 2 ships to the fabric area. So it's pretty important to get these private destinations because a lot of the spots are going to get blocked throughout the game, and this is going to give you some flexibility because nobody else can sail to your private destinations. Okay, so that's one of the things you're going to be doing most often is sending your ships out to the board, utilizing them as resources, and as you can see, once it's out there, it's out there. Now I'm going to have less ships that I can use to utilize resources, so you have to be conscious of that. One of the other things that you can do is you can build boats. All right, and it tells you right here what the cost is for those boats in wood. In the first round, there are 4 rounds, it's 5. The second and third round is 4. The last round is 3. So let's say on a later turn that I spent 6 wood to be able to build this ship, because all of them are 5. This ship would go into my port area, meaning that it's not available this round, but starting next round, it could be available. All right, so building ships is one of the things you can do. You can also build a lighthouse. The way you do that is by going to an area that shows this symbol with the gain 1 lighthouse symbol. Let's say I had gone there, and what that does is allows me to take my leftmost lighthouse, and now I can put it on any spot with a lighthouse symbol. So it could be my private destination if I wanted to. It could be one of these locations out here. So I think maybe people are going to want to use this wild resource spot a lot. So I might put my lighthouse there. What happens is that for the rest of the game, whenever anybody goes there, I now have an option. I can either spend 2 food to put 1 ship anywhere I want in my resource area, or I can just gain a food. The other thing that it does is it now opens up more spots for my food storage. So before, where I was maxed out at 6 food, now I have 7. All right? The other thing that you're going to be doing, is you are going to be potentially gaining these cards that are going to be instant points, which is up here on the right, and it's going to give you some immediate action. In this case, you can send one ship to your fabric area, and also these cards oftentimes are used for set collection depending upon the different kind of bonuses that are out there, okay? The last thing that I wanted to talk about here for the main actions are these character cards, okay? At the beginning of the game, you're going to choose 1 symbol, okay? And you'll get the starting 6 cards of that symbol. So you see I chose the ship symbol. I also put that little token there as a reminder. Generally, these cards are going to give you a little bit of a focus at the beginning of a game. So this one's going to be helping you to build ships, all right? So if you choose this deck of 6 cards, you may want to start focusing on building ships early on, okay? There are, I believe, 6 different starting hands, and some of them are helping you with gaining these characters. Some of you are helping you gain those cards. Others are gaining resources, things along those lines. These start in your hand, but to play them out in front of you to get their benefit, you have to spend the cost up here. So when you get a card down here, which is going to be gained by this symbol where it says gain 1 character, you don't play it right away. You just take it and you add it to your hand of other cards. On a future turn, you can play these out by paying whatever the resources are and then putting it in your player area. There are a number of different types of cards. You can see these with the infinity symbol are something that just stays throughout the game, a kind of a continuous power that you have. These cards with the lightning bolt there are immediate cards. So instantly, you're going to be able to put 2 ships into your wood area. These are end of game scoring cards. So the only end of game scoring are going to be based off of these cards. Every other element of scoring is done throughout the game. The only end game scoring are with these cards. Oh, pardon me, these cards here, okay? There are some other types of cards that were not in these starting decks, this particular starting deck that I can show you. This is a card that will allow you to exhaust it once per round to be able to do something. So you just kind of exhaust it. You can do something at the beginning of the next round. It becomes unexhausted. All right, and I believe those are all of the card types. Yes, they are. Okay, so you're going to continue taking actions until you either pass, in which case if you're the first person to pass, you get the wind rose, which will make you the start player in the next round, or you run out of ships and you've done everything that you can do on your particular turn. Once everybody has passed, then we'll get to the end of that action phase, and we'll go to the next phase here, which is feeding your sailors, okay? And so you need to feed your sailors at the end of every round. So when you have all your ships unbuilt, it's 2 food. As you build more ships, it's going to be more and more food that you have to spend every round to feed them, all right? And then the third element of each round is to check the different bonuses, okay? So at the beginning of the game, randomly, there were these goals that you're going for each round, okay? And there are a bunch of other ones that weren't used in this game. It's just, like I said, random. And you put them for age 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what this one is saying is that you're going to get a certain number of points at the end of the first round for every one of those cards up there, 1 point for every private destination that you have built, and 1 point per every character that you have played, not that you've drawn into your hand. But on the board here, there's little kind of additives that might show up. So this is now saying instead of 1 point, it's 3 plus 1, 4 points. Instead of 1 point, it's 2 plus 1 for 3 points, okay? And they're going to be different every round, but you can see them from the beginning of the game so you know what you might be shooting for. Also, additionally, there are these goals. There are 2 simpler ones and 1 much more difficult one, which shows the variation in scoring. The highest you can get here is 24. And these are basically just achievements that you can reach. They are races. So the first player to have 3 destinations and a total of 7 ships built, that's including the 4 you started with, would get 12 points. Later on, whoever will get it next would get 8, and then 4, etc. Okay? So that's going to be the flow of a round. You're going to be doing your actions, you're going to be feeding your sailors, and then you're going to be checking for bonuses, and you'll be scoring all of that immediately. The only end-game scoring, again, are the end-of-game scoring cards. All right? There are some optional actions that I haven't talked about. There are some details I've left out, but that's a general overview of Amalfi Renaissance. Let's head back over, and I'll let you know what I think. All right, so there I think you get a pretty good idea on how the game of Amalfi Renaissance is played. The first thing that I want to do is I want to talk about the fact that this is a bit of a remixed version of a previously released game called Amalfi. And as you can see, this is a game that I have owned for a while, and I've played it many different times. And so when I heard that they were doing an updated version of the game, I was obviously intrigued because I liked the original game quite a bit. And so with the obvious difference of a much larger box, there are some other differences within the 2 games that I'm going to start this review with, because I think they're going to be relevant whether you had any knowledge of the original Amalfi game or not. Many of the changes are in the components area, and so let me start with that. This edition, the Amalfi Renaissance, has some upgraded components over the original game, which was a much smaller production from an indie Japanese publisher. In this version, you've got a double layered game board, which obviously is very, very nice. It's what you tend to see in more premium games. It's got now these tiles that are unique to this version. We didn't have any of these types of things in the original game. The wooden pieces are very similar. There were nice wooden pieces, screen printed wooden pieces in the original, and this is similar here. But this is a top-notch production. Even the player boards that I showed you, those are double layered, thick cardboard player boards, and in the original, they were card stock, okay? And so the components in this game are very, very good. The card quality is good. The thickness of these double layered type tiles are very, very good. The screen printed wooden pieces are fantastic. As a matter of fact, the original publisher of this game started off as a custom wooden piece company and then have since gone into games. And so I really, really think the production is fantastic. I think the iconography is good throughout. And so that is nothing but positives there. Another change between the original and this game is something that I would be pointing out anyway. And the fact that you now have these starting hands of cards, those starting 6 hands of cards. There was no such thing in the original game. You drafted basically your opening cards. Here, they are all kind of tailor-made to be a starting hand of cards. And I really, really like that. I think that it is not only a smarter way, because you've got kind of cards that are relevant throughout the different phases of the game, preloaded kind of into your hand, but they also give you somewhat of a focus, because in a game like this where there's so many different things you can do, so many different scoring opportunities, so many different strategies to pursue, having a hand of cards that when you look through them, they kind of give you some direction to what you might want to do. I think that that is very, very beneficial, especially to new players to the game, but also to repeat players, because they want to maybe try out different strategies. You know, when I play one game, I'm focusing on private destinations, and so I have the starting hand that helps me with that. In a further game, maybe I want to go into, you know, these cards, and so I'm going to choose one of the decks that kind of help me go in that direction. And so that is really, really nice. The other difference in this game is the kind of the different goals that you have working for each era. I really like how these are randomized, and it kind of also gives you a direction, because this game, again, can be overwhelming with what do I do? These things give you some direction. These tiles, which were not in the original, give you some direction, things that you can maybe focus on. You might say, there are two of those kind of bonus tiles that both relate to the character card. So maybe I'll make that a focus. And if you had the character card deck, that might even make you double down on that. So those are the main differences between the game. The things that have stayed the same are the idea of the ships being both workers that you place and resources. And I think that that is a brilliant, brilliant twist on a traditional worker placement mechanic, because it combines worker placement and resource management. And the way that it limits your resources, I think, is brilliant. But there's enough ways to find different ways around it that I also think that that is a nice element to this game, that it's tight. And especially at larger player counts, the spaces are tighter. So you need to be able to find ways to gain those destinations that only you can go to, so that you're not completely dependent upon things that are available to the other players. One of the things that I did not mention in the overview, because I wasn't trying to get too lost in the weeds, is that at the end of each round, these private destination tiles, the one that's on the right, will move to a location on the board that is available for all the players. And so each round you're kind of changing at least 3 of the action spots, and then it'll go to 2 and then to 1. But I really like that element too. Another thing that's actually different about this version of the game are the lighthouses, the way that those work. I think that's fantastic, and it adds a very big interaction point in the game, because if you place your lighthouses on other players' private destinations, that really makes them, you can see the internal struggle when they want to place their ships on one of their private destinations, because now they're giving you something too. You're not taking anything from them at all, but you're giving something to the player whose lighthouse it is. And so I really like that element of the game as well. It's a game that has, I think, a nice flow to it. The number of actions at first can seem a little bit overwhelming, but as you play through the game, you realize that it's not that bad. What you really, I think, have a bit of a learning curve on in this game is, first of all, identifying the different strategies that you might want to go for. And then, second to that, figuring out how to make those strategies come together with all of these different actions you can take. You know, when do I want to build my ships? Do I want to do that early because it's more expensive to build your ships early? Or do you want to wait until later when they're cheaper and then you get a bunch of ships? Because more ships equal more actions, more resources. So the timing of that is something that can be a little bit tricky to get a hang of. Some things that may not seem like they're very important the first couple times you play the game, through repeat plays, you find out that they are. You know, these cards all give you a lot of points. Okay, they also can tend to, you know, work towards different bonuses. But in the first few games I played, I kind of ignored them, and I realized that that was maybe not smart, because you're going to be getting most of your points in the game. The only end of game scoring is in those cards. So all of this being said, I think that this is a really, really well done Euro game. I think that the twists The theme's not going to be the thing that draws most people in. It certainly wasn't the thing that drew me in. The fact that it's got a worker placement, there's a lot of worker placement games out there. There's a lot of resource management games. But the way those two intersect in this game is what I feel makes it stand apart from other worker placement, other resource management Euros out there. The look of it is fantastic. Obviously, I've talked quite a bit about that. I think the art is very, very nice throughout. As I said, the iconography I found to be quite good. So this is a game that I feel is excellent, and I'm going to be scoring it accordingly. I'm giving Amalfi Renaissance an 8.5 out of 10, a seal of excellence. This does so many things well, and it has the right type of interaction where you're not necessarily taking away from other players, you are potentially blocking, limiting their options, and gaining stuff for yourself, but it doesn't necessarily remove. You're not directly attacking. This is not a take that type of a game. And so all of that being said, fantastic game, 8.5 out of 10, one I heartily recommend. And if you like Euros, but you want just some twists on familiar formulas, you should really check out Amalfi Renaissance. All right, well, that's going to do it for me. This is Mike DiLisio signing off from the Dice Tower Midwest Annex.